Okay, time to come out from under your rock. I got some news for you. There's new MacBook Pros, and we have a few of them. I've got variants of both the M1 Pro and the M1 Max in the 14 and 16-inch sizes. Basically, we are doing a lot of videos that are going to be very interesting over the coming weeks, so be sure to stay tuned. But I just got these out of the box, and well, I haven't really poked around them on purpose because I want to discover them together with you to answer questions I have and answer questions that you provided to me on Twitter. The first question comes to me from viewer Quinn Nelson of Snazzy Labs. What do they look like on the inside? What do they look like on the inside? Okay, let's start with the 14-inch, the base model, because this is typically where you'll find they cut stuff out. They leave out a fan or, what have you. It looks like a pretty similar opening procedure to MacBooks of past. Yep, it's a Penelope P3. I'm using an iFixit kit, but of course you could use any. And typically these screws are slightly different lengths, so you need to be aware of that when you're taking them all out. I don't know, maybe not this year. The front ones have to be, I would think. Okay, so we've got the screws out. These four are the same length, and these four are the same length, which is awesome. The cover does not come just straight off, which is seemingly a continuation of what happened with the 2016 and later MacBook Pros. So there's some tabs we're gonna have to shim out. All right, we've got one more snap here, and we should be able to pull towards us if it's the same as the old MacBook Pros. And it is. And oh, have you ever seen a more beautiful design? Now I will note that this back rear cover is very, very flexible. More so than the old MacBook Pro covers. It almost feels cheap, but that's surprising because the whole rest of the entire computer feels so much more rigid and quality than the prior MacBook Pros. Holy smokes, this thing is beautiful. Okay, so even on the base model 14-inch, we've got these massive blower fans that are intaking air from the sides that run along the batteries and all of these surface mount components, and then they get sucked into the blowers. And then there is this gasketed off section, which there has always been, that exhausts air through the radiators out the back of the machine. Obviously, you've got this big, massive copper heat pipe. It is pretty wide, and frankly, the depth on this appears to be deeper than prior MacBook Pros. There's two of them, and then clearly here in the middle, you've got your M1 Pro or M1 Max. The SoC is in the center, and then you have your unified memory flanking both sides. On the Pro, there's one module on each side, and on the Max, there's two modules on each side. But just some errant observations. I'm not going to do a full teardown. That's something for iFixit to do. But I have noted that there are pull tabs on these batteries, which is really, really good. Previously, from 2012 onward, Apple would basically glue the batteries in. So when you needed to replace them, you ran the risk of damaging the entire bottom shell of the notebook, or you would puncture the battery and start a fire. It was really bad from a repairability standpoint. And the cells were so, tightly fit that it was really difficult to do replacements anyway. I remember back in 2015 when the original 12-inch MacBook came out, they bragged about how they had to precision align the batteries with a robot because there was less than 1 millimeter of tolerance on both sides. This is clearly not the case. There is oodles of space. But interestingly, they've put batteries behind the trackpad, which they haven't done previously. And that may be because these machines are slightly thicker. You've got your subwoofers down here, as well as their passive radiation chambers. You've got your tweeters behind the motherboard on this side. And then one thing I do note is that both the Thunderbolt connectors, as well as the headphone jack, and even MagSafe, these are all modular. So these can be removed and replaced, which is excellent. On the other side, we've got a removable Thunderbolt as well. Unfortunately, the HDMI and SD card slot do appear to be soldered to the main board. So don't break those. But everything else looks pretty standard affair. You've got your antenna connectors down here. The connectivity on MacBook Pros has always been excellent, and I don't anticipate that changing. Most of your antennas come out of the plastic section here in the back, where the exhaust air is. And yeah, holy smokes, that just is a beautiful computer. Let's see if the 16-inch is any different. Needed to break out the big guns. This one's a lot deeper. than the 16-inch on those snaps. The cover, oh, that feels even worse because of how big it is. Look at the flex in that thing. Okay, but the inside, wow. I mean, you could definitely see that the batteries are larger, and those intake fans are ginormous. I mean, here's a guitar pick for comparison. Those are very, very, very large. I mean, what, probably 50, 60 millimeter? I don't know, they're big blower fans. But other than that, it looks literally identical. There's a little more spacing in between the components on the board, but other than that, same stuff that's modular on the last one is modular on this one. Same stuff that's not isn't. Obviously, your subwoofers are a little larger as well, so sound on the 16-inch should, in theory, be better, and we've already kind of determined that that is the case, but holy smokes. That's a hot piece of gear. Viewer Brett, actually went to high school with Brett, wants to know if the Thunderbolt 4 ports share the same bus. On previous generation MacBook Pros from 2016 onward, the ports on one side shared a bus. So you could get 40 gigabits per second through one of them, but if you were using both of them, your effective bandwidth was halved. Now, if we go into About This Mac and go into System Report, we can go down to Thunderbolt 4, and look at that. There is actually a bus per port. There were a lot that theorized that maybe they might share a single bus. That would not have been good. That is clearly not the case here. Every single port gets its own 40 gigabits throughput directly to the SoC, and that is excellent. That means that if you're docking this as kind of a desktop computer, you probably don't have to meddle with the ports on the right side. You can just chill with the left side. Provide power, data, displays, and everything you need. That's awesome. Alan asks, can you charge using the 3 Thunderbolt ports and MagSafe port all at the same time? Will it be faster? This is a question that we actually got a lot. And the answer is obviously no, but I will demo it just to satiate you. Okay, so we've got our 140 watt adapter right here. We're gonna plug in the MagSafe connector, boom. And then I've got a 96 watt adapter. And you know what? Why don't I plug this into the other side so we don't put in too much power and explode the machine? That's a joke. Okay, let's go to About This Mac, and then if we go back to System Profiler, we can go down to Power, and if we scroll down to the bottom, it'll show us our AC charger information. There's just one, the 140 watt USB-C adapter. Okay, I did plug that in first, so let's unplug that. Let's refresh it, and yeah, now it says the 96 watt adapter. Now what if I leave that plugged in and plug the 140 back in? Is it gonna stay on the 96 watt? No. So it just defaults to whatever the highest wattage power adapter is plugged in. But no, you can't charge faster by plugging in every single port. The thing charges to 50% in 30 minutes. How fast do you want? Alan. Listener Joe asks about high impedance headphones. Apple specifically called out that there was a new headphone jack on these new MacBook Pros. How headphones work are, well, it's complicated, but I've explained this in previous videos, which I'll link below. Basically, what you need to know about impedance is that is the resistance required in order to drive the headphones. The smaller diameter the wire, the higher the resistance, therefore the more voltage that needs to go through to move the specific drivers. So if I plug a pair of headphones into something like the old, it's still available for sale, M1 MacBook Air, and I press play on a song from the band Silvercup, with whom I have zero affiliation. It's not like it's my brother and sister or anything. Okay, I've got the system maxed right now. It's pretty loud. This is louder than I would listen to normally, but it's not deafening me. It's fine. This is why I was interested by Apple statements, because I've always felt that the MacBook, and frankly all of their computers, have been pretty good at driving higher impedance headphones. Now they don't sound great because the headphone amplifier quality has never been that good, but they can drive power hungry headphones. So I'm interested to see how it performs on this new machine. I will note that they have relocated the headphone adapter to the left side, which is amazing because on most pairs of headphones, these are kind of weird, you have a single lead and it almost always comes out of the left ear cup. And for whatever reason, with 2016 MacBook Pro, Apple's like, let's put it on the right. And then you had to cross the cable around your body and around your hand and your type. It sucked. It's back to its proper position on the left. And that is very, very nice. Okay. Let's go on to music. We'll press play. Okay, it's already too loud. This is about the same volume I was at before on the MacBook Air, and we're at 70%. If I cranked it all the way up, that's not tolerable. It'll blow your ears out. So yes, there is more volume on this machine. I will note through the very short listening sessions I've had that the amplifier quality still doesn't seem very great. It's fine on the Sennheiser HD600s because they're kind of mid-range headphones. On higher-end headphones like my LCD3s from Oddities, it was bad. They sounded bad. They were dying for power. They had the volume they needed, but just everything sounded so mushy and crunched. This is not replacing a headphone amp, is what I'm saying, on your desk. But if you're around town and you have slightly less efficient headphones, great. But it's not a game changer. It's just like, it's a thing. Mike asks, with a seemingly thinner magnet area, how does MagSafe 3 compare to generations 1 and 2 in terms of ability like holding in place? That's a great question. And, what better way than to just show you? So I have a 2008 MacBook here, which ran on the original MagSafe 1. And now I have the new MagSafe 3. As you can see, the new connector is significantly thinner. It's a little longer, but it is much, much thinner. Now, ignoring the old MagSafe for a second, the new MagSafe seems very, very good. If I apply pressure to pull it straight out, it requires a ton of force. However, it still serves its purpose where if I rip it out at even the slightest angle, it's gonna come straight out. One frustration I had with the original MagSafe and MagSafe 2, I think will remain here, and that's if you're like in bed and you have a blanket in the way or something, it requires very little pressure to disconnect this cable. And that happened very, very easily. So the great thing is you still have USB-C if you want to leave a more kind of permanently attached connection, but it absolutely serves its purpose as a magnetic connector. Now, as for how it compares to the original MagSafe, at first I thought, it's pretty close to the same, but it is not. If I get the original MagSafe, this connection is significantly weaker. I mean, I wish I had a scale to show you how much force is required to remove them, but it's not even close. I mean, this connector, the new one, has got to be like at least 2 to 3 times stronger. It's really impressive. And it becomes obvious when you put a piece of magnetic paper in front of it because there are these 2 ginormous neodymium magnets flanking each side of the connector, which is really, really nice. Now that we have the paper out, you can check out the speakers. There's the left tweeter here, there's the right tweeter here. So you've got stereo tweeters, and then you've got a subwoofer on each side. They're actually 2 subwoofers that are they're basically stuck right against each other, and then they passively radiate through this massive chamber here in the keyboard deck area. Now, all these little dots, you might be wondering, what are those? That is, of course, the magnetic connectors, or the magnets that hold the screen in place. So you've got a row of 4 on this side, you've got a ton of them on the top, there's none in the middle, there's a ton on both sides, and there you go. I'm kind of just rambling now, but magnets, how do they work? Connor asks, how deep is the SD card slot? Well, there's no better way to test it than to just grab an SD card and stick it in the returned slot. Now, the old one was just standard SD. This new one is SDXC. I bet it's not going to be too deep. And it's not. It's less than half the depth of the card, which is good because you still need the ability to easily grab it out. If you were hoping to use this as expandable storage, A, I would discourage it because SD cards are fairly slow, and B, just buy more storage for your computer. However, I do anticipate there being the return of these little guys. They were like these little tiny short cards, and basically it was just an adapter to fit a micro SD card into a stubby SD card that you could stick in through the side, and then there was usually a hook that you could use to pull the card out. So if you want a more permanent storage solution, this could work. I don't know if it's the same depth as old ones, I would suspect not, but who knows? Maybe there will be a return of these drives. I think they suck. I will not be using them, but it is a cheap way to get a lot of storage. You can get a terabyte micro SD card for like a couple $100 now. It's amazing. Now, I'm sorry, we've avoided the questions long enough. We've got to talk about the notch. Now, I'm not going to hate on it. I just want to get to know you. I want to understand why you exist. I want to be your friend. Hey, notch. Okay, so the first question is, what's behind the notch? If we take our cursor we can just drag it behind the notch and I can move it around and it feels like that part of the screen is just missing. Our cursor does not crash into the black part of the notch. It doesn't jump from one side to the other. It feels like there's just screen behind here. And that leads us to our next question. How do screenshots look with the notch? And well, they don't, because if we take a screenshot and go full screen, you can see that it draws all the pixels. As far as I'm concerned, the computer might not even know that the notch is there, and it just keeps drawing stuff behind it, despite your eyes not really being able to see it. It's kind of weird. That is a contrast, however, from the next question. Is the OS aware of the rounded corners in the top and left side of the screen so that the cursor doesn't kind of disappear there because it thinks that the corners are squared with those missing pixels? This is a problem in Windows, not only Windows 11, but with the Surface Laptop Studio. Your cursor will just go behind the rounded pixels because it's drawing them. The computer thinks they're there, they're just not. As you can tell, the bottom left and right corners are still perfectly square. But as we move our cursor all the way up into the top corner, you'll see that it actually goes around the curve. So if I keep my finger and go perfectly straight up, it kind of just goes around all by itself. So there you have it. It does actually know that those pixels are missing and it draws them in kind. Why not the notch though? And that's going to take us to our next question. What happens if the icons on the right side of the menu bar are too numerous, or on the left side, you have too many tabs? Does that just get lost in the notch? Let's find out. Okay, so DaVinci Resolve is installed, and if I open it, huh? Wait, what? Okay, hold on. So you'll see that in the menu bar, our app items seem to span across the notch. Oh, what the? And now look, our mouse just jumps from one side to the other. So that behavior we just explained, look at that. It just zooms over to the side. Okay, so that, okay, hold on. I'm just trying to, wait a minute. Where's the rest of our app items? They're just gone. Can I scroll them? Hang on. No, they're just gone. Okay, wait, hold on. If I quit DaVinci Resolve, they come back. But when I open it, they just disappear. This is not like Bartender where they're like collapsed into it. They're just gone. What the? Okay, hold on. Now let's see what happens if I have a lot of app items. So that's the stuff over, or excuse me, status items. That's the things over here on the right. So let's open iStat menus, okay? Let's turn this on. Wait a minute. There's just stuff behind the menu bar. What? Or behind the notch. It's just, I can't even see the stuff. It's just there. What the freaking heck, dude? Okay, now what happens if I open both at the same time? Presumably Resolve just is like, see, iStat menus were more important. What the freaking? Okay, this is clearly like not well baked, because this is weird, but this is doable, right? Where like stuff jumps over to the right side and the left side because you need more room. I do think that they need to make something that can allow you to extend your other items in your status or in your menu bar, but okay. And then when you close it, this stuff just straight up hangs out underneath the notch. Now maybe that's an iStat menus problem, but I doubt it. That should be the system's job, not the, what? I'm still trying to process what just happened. That's so weird. That's so bad. I mean, like, they're gonna fix it, but come on. Here's another thing that's weird, okay? Someone asks, what happens if you go into full screen mode? Here's how this display works. People don't understand that the notch is not cutting into the display that used to be there. The aspect ratio from MacBooks for the last like several years has been 16:10. This display without the menu bar right here, this is 16:10. So don't think of it as like your display losing pixels because of the notch. Think of it as your display gaining like horns or something. These are all new pixels that do not count into the old aspect ratio. And so you actually have effectively more space because your menu bar is no longer in the way. But because it's no longer in the way, you would hope that it would stay there in full screen mode because again, it's not getting in the way. But I don't know, maybe the apps go like, if we go full screen on Maps, no. Okay, so the app just goes below the notch. Like this actually looks like an old MacBook Pro. But now look, if I move my mouse cursor up into the menu bar pops back up. But why not just leave that persistent there all the time? Because why? The app's not using any of that space. So why would you get rid of that? Just leave that there. The notch needs some work. This is messy. Okay, so you know that feature added in iOS 15 where you can change, I think it was iOS 15, where you can change the tonality of the microphone? That is now in macOS. Unfortunately, it's in like really weird places. So here in FaceTime, I can go up into the control center and I can add video effects. I can also change my mic mode from standard to voice isolation and wide spectrum. Exactly the same as on iOS. Now, where it's weird is that this so far has only worked in FaceTime. If I open voice memos, which is also a Catalyst app, so it should be supported, and I press record, the video effects option pops up, which why? I'm not using the camera, but the mic mode is grayed out. That's very strange. And then if I open an old app that's not written in Catalyst, like Photo Booth, I just have no options whatsoever. So this is weird. It needs some attention and some love. But I guess the question is, how do the microphones actually sound? So let's try them. Hello, I run the YouTube channel Snazzy Labs, and I'm making a video about the new MacBook Pros. And boy, let me tell you, the notch is an interesting thing. All right, we can be done. Rob asks, keyboard feel, keyboard feel, keyboard feel, keyboard feel, he goes on for a while. How does the keyboard feel? Because that's pretty important in a laptop. Let me answer the question by not starting with the trackpad. The trackpad's exactly the same. If you felt a recent trackpad, it's the same. It's ginormous. It feels amazing. It still uses the Taptic Engine. It still has Force Touch capabilities, which I wish we had freaking 3D Touch on iOS. It's great, okay? The keyboard it's the same. Well, with a caveat, it is the same as the 16-inch MacBook Pro and the most recent M1 MacBook Pros. So pretty much 2019 and later. Remember that awful scissor switch in 2016 that was introduced? Yeah, that's been gone for a while. Forget about that. This is not the same as this. Its travel feel is fairly similar actually to the 2015 MacBook Pro, but it does feel better. I think it's their best keyboard yet. They've backed to the inverted T, which a lot of people really, really love. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. It's just fine. And then the function row. Oh, did you hear that? Oh, that's scary. The function row is full height. You've got this massive escape key, and then Touch ID is still like it's a button. So you've got your keys and your button. And now we get to the section that actual professionals care about, performance, relative to lower bin versions of itself and prior generations of computer. Now, stay tuned for our full review. We recognize that a lot of YouTubers have the tendency, including us, to just talk about video because that's what we do professionally. But I have been reaching out to a number of people that work in VFX and 3D rendering and machine learning and developer. We're getting a lot of people to try this machine out and give their thoughts on how it affects them in their field, rather than just, oh, look how fast DaVinci Resolve is. But while we're here, let's look at how fast DaVinci Resolve is. Okay, we're pretty blown away. Not only are we running a screen recording, but we've got Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and a number of other applications opened. I want to show you some red code footage right here inside of Final Cut Pro. This is 8K raw footage on an 8K timeline. And despite all that, and by the way, we have grades applied, we can go full screen and the playback is shockingly good. Now we are dropping some frames, but it's absolutely viewable. And this is at a full 8K resolution view. If we move to the better performance tab, it will cut down the effective resolution. It dynamically scales based on the load of the computer, but this brings back pretty much every single frame you need, and it still looks shockingly good to me. It's amazing how well this stuff runs. But DaVinci Resolve is a little more impressive in my mind because it gives you more real data. And it's bananas what this thing can do. So similarly to Final Cut, we do not have optimized or proxy media turned on. We are running this at the full resolution. This is, as mentioned, 8K red code raw. It's a 15:1 compression ratio, which is actually fairly compressed, so it's even more taxing on the computer to uncompress all of that as it plays it back. And then additionally, we are decoding at a full resolution premium decode. So this is a very taxing task, and it's pretty impressive. Playing back just the regular log footage, we're pulling about 24 to 26 frames per second. Now, that's not as good, obviously, as the 30 FPS frame rate that the footage is shot in, but that's shockingly close. And what's more amazing is that the more layers we apply, where machines typically come to a crawl, this seems to keep on chugging. So let's apply a Rec. 709 color grade, and it's about the same frame rate. Now, if we go back and turn on both the slight color adjustment we made and then another artistic grade, this is now 3 color layers, and it's still managing about the same frame rate, 24 to 26 frames per second. Effects are where you can really bring footage to its knees, particularly blurs, and why not just throw on a couple other effects as well. And despite all of this, we press play, and we're pulling pretty much the same frame rate, 24 to 26 frames per second. It's absolutely incredible. Now, it is important, typically, to be able to view your footage in the frame rate that it was shot in when you're editing. So what's great about this is you can go back into the playback, you can use a proxy mode at half resolution, and half resolution plays back at a fixed 30. I mean, it's great. It doesn't drop a single frame. This performance is incredible. It is very close, if not maybe in some areas superseding what our Mac Pro can do. And we don't have a base configuration. We've got a $13,000 Mac Pro, and this thing in certain areas is, if not kicking its butt, getting really close. And this is a laptop. The fans are turned off. It's barely warm. It's freaking incredible. I am so excited what is in store for these computers, and we have a lot of stuff that we're going to be testing over the coming weeks. So be sure to get subscribed, like this video if you enjoyed it. Well, if you didn't like it, send it to someone you don't like. They're gonna hate it. But most importantly, and as always, stay snazzy.